because the situation is similar to what could have been experienced in a memory that is closer to us, in the colonies, in the European colonies in Africa or Asia, in the 19th and even in the 20th century. Who was there? The white masters and the indigenous people. The indigenous people did have rights, but they did not have as many as the whites. In the Roman Empire, it is the same. The barbarians living in the provinces are not Roman citizens and do not have the same rights as Roman citizens. I tend to call them indigenous. The Romans also wondered how to name them. This is a slightly complicated thing, but I still want to tell you because it is indicative of how the Romans thought. At a certain point, the Romans invent a term, or rather, extend a term. They already had to refer to the barbarian inhabitants of the conquered provinces. This term is peregrinus. It is the ancestor of our word pilgrim, right? Peregrinus is one who wanders far away. Thus, peregrinus meant this: it was the foreigner far from his home. The term originated because in Rome, when a foreigner arrived, there was a need for a term to indicate them, and they used peregrinus. The beauty is that when the Romans conquer another country, they decide that the status of the indigenous inhabitants becomes that of peregrini, meaning that the inhabitants of a country conquered by the Romans become legally foreign in their own home. It is the Romans who are at home in Gaul, in North Africa, in Syria, in Britannia, in Spain, in the Balkans. The Romans are always at home. It is their empire. The local inhabitants are foreigners, precisely peregrini. Here, this distinction among the inhabitants of the Roman Empire between Roman citizens, who are, let's say in quotes, the white masters, and the indigenous people of the provinces, the barbarian inhabitants of the provinces, is a fundamental distinction. Being a citizen gives you all the rights and all the privileges. If you are not a citizen, you are a subject. I will give you a beautiful example of the difference between being a citizen and not being one in the Roman Empire. I will tell you about it. Let us use as a reference a text that many of us have heard of, perhaps even read, but we usually do not consider it a source for Roman history: the Acts of the Apostles, New Testament. In the Acts of the Apostles, it is told that St. Paul preached in Jerusalem, and therefore in a city of the Roman Empire. St. Paul was preaching in Jerusalem, and the Jewish priests were annoyed. They turned to the commander of the Roman garrison to have him arrested. The commander of the Roman garrison has his orders to maintain good relations with the local elites. Therefore, if the priests are pleased to have this individual arrested, the commander of the Roman garrison in Jerusalem will take care of it. St. Paul is arrested. They take him to the barracks. They tie him to the post to whip him a bit as preparation for the interrogation, normal procedure. St. Paul allows himself to be tied to the post. Then when he is there and they are about to whip him, St. Paul turns to the officer and says, "But since when can you whip a Roman citizen without first giving him a trial?" At this point, in a panic and dismay, the officer rushes to the commander and realizes that the one we have arrested is a Roman citizen. The commander rushes down. Paul is still there, tied to the pole. The commander of the Roman garrison in Jerusalem says to him, "But I am told that you are a Roman citizen." "Oh yes," says St. Paul. At this point, the dialogue becomes surreal, because the Roman commander says, "I am also a Roman citizen, and this citizenship has cost me a lot of money." And St. Paul says, "No, I am a citizen by birth." At this point, they release him, apologize to him, and ask if he can please remain available in the city because they need to inform the emperor in Rome. One cannot touch a Roman citizen without conducting the trial in the presence of the emperor in Rome. So, do you remember what had happened a few years earlier in the same place for the same reason to another person who had been arrested at the request of the priest because he was causing a disturbance? And who when they tied him to the stake, could not say, I am a Roman citizen. Here, the difference between what happened to Jesus and what happened to St. Paul is the difference between being an indigenous person and being a citizen in the Roman Empire. However, I would like to pause for a moment on this story of the Acts of the Apostles, because there are several things to clarify. First, the commander of the Roman garrison in Jerusalem says to St. Paul, I am also a Roman citizen. And how is that possible? It is very possible, because the Roman army is not recruited only from citizens. That would be a problem. In the empire, most of the population are not citizens. They are natives and do not serve in the military, let alone. Of course they do. The Roman army is divided into two: the legions, which are recruited only from citizens, and the units they call auxiliaries, the other half, which recruit anyone. They recruit natives. And I must say, the Romans have no problem recruiting even barbarians from outside the empire. If someone is willing to serve, the Romans will hire them, and you can become an officer and advance in your career. The garrison of Jerusalem did not include legions. It only comprised auxiliary units, Syrians, Arabs, and therefore non-citizens. It is worth noting that the commander, at least he, has Roman citizenship, and it has cost him a lot of money, because Roman citizenship can be obtained in many ways. Paying bribes is what we are least informed about, but it was evidently the most widespread. But if you think, to conclude with this example of St. Paul, St. Paul was not a Jew. Of course, he was a Jew from Asia Minor, and he was a Roman citizen by birth. In Rome, citizenship is a privilege that distinguishes citizens from natives. But it is not something reserved solely for ius sanguinis. There is no need to be Roman, of Roman descent, or at least Italic, to be a Roman citizen. Roman citizenship is granted, but it is granted based on political criteria, or rather, based on various criteria. Let us always remember the bribes paid by the commander, but that is another story. There is a main criterion. Citizenship is granted to people who matter and can be useful. Why is St. Paul a Roman citizen? Because in Tarsus, there are various families of notable Jews or Greeks who support the Roman regime, and those people need to be rewarded, so they are given citizenship. Throughout the empire, local leaders who agree to support Roman power are rewarded with citizenship, becoming Roman citizens, part of the dominant people, and co-opted among the masters of the empire. And this is a practice that is followed in all provinces, without ever asking, when one wants to grant citizenship to a notable or a leader, what color their skin is, what their hair is like, what language they speak, or to which gods they make sacrifices. The only thing that matters is that one wants to be a good Roman, that is, to support the power of Rome.